is we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Phones adjusted.
Phones are on.
Okay. Limit your thumping on the table to emphasize your points.
Which tends to be what I do. Okay,
Is that close enough for me?
Yeah.
For
no,
you?
come on over just a little
Okay.
bit more. I won't bite
There
you.
we go.
There we go. All right, so this is going to be real comfortable and casual. Know that we do have an audience out there that listens, so we can this and this and this and this, and it's just fine. Until I start doing this, and then he says, so we're going to go about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes,
Great.
and we'll take a break
Great.
and make sure he's up to speed, and then we'll come back.
Super.
Ready?
Mm-hmm. Well, hello there. Thank you for joining us on your valuable lunch hour. This is Susan Hamilton. You're listening to the OffBeat Business Show. All of this month we are talking about networking because it's our goal to always bring you the very best resources so that you can shine in life and business. And we know who you are, so we know that you're not getting the information in quite the size and space that you need. So OffBeat Business Media comes out here to represent the 80% of American small business that tend to be family-owned businesses of 9 employees or less. That means we're building our businesses while we're raising our kids, taking care of our parents. We probably have a veteran in our family or workspace, and about 30% of us have an addict in our family or workspace. So when we bring you information, we respect who you are, friends, and only bring you the things that are going to elevate what you're doing in life and business. That being said, meet my friend George Hendley and what he's doing with the Speakers Association, because we are trying to really give you some alternative ideas for networking. These days, there's so many ways to do it, and largely, George, I think that is a struggle. I think probably the two biggest things that people are not doing that they could be doing more of to build their own business influence is wearing all the hats in their business, trying to do it all themselves, which will wear you out. But they're also not getting out there to shake hands with those other people, have those effective conversations so that they even know what it might look like to expand their vision and bring someone else on to take on a role that possibly would be better held by someone else.
Sure, sure. Well, at the Speakers Academy, Susan, the great thing that we're doing come up this October is 5 years of an anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And we work with business leaders
Excellent.
who want the skills and confidence to inspire and influence their listeners. And everybody has listeners today, whether they are on the phone, whether they are face-to-face, whether they're one-on-one, whether they're small group. Everybody has listeners of one kind or another. People are aching for some kind of inspiration in their life, and they're looking for someone who will offer that inspiration to them. If we know how, by way of what we do in our physicality, as well as what we say with our words, to inspire and influence others in a non-manipulative way, non-manipulative way, then we have the ability to really garner some force behind us and influence people in a positive way. And that's what we continue to do and see the benefits for and what we are doing with people.
Excellent. I agree with you. I think that when we are comfortable sharing what it is that we do with someone else, not only do we have an agreement of sorts, because now we're communicating and we both understand, but we have this opportunity then to turn around and be shared and really and enjoy the referrals, because if they can clearly understand you and understand where you're coming from, because that's really what people are buying, isn't it? When it comes to doing business, they're buying you. Do they,
That's right.
They're buying you. So being
That's
able
right.
to have that communication so that they can turn around and say, well, this is someone that I know, and this is what they stand for. I just think that's huge, and the art of the story is a huge component.
Absolutely it is. We live in what's called a real digital age, but I look at you and me as analog. And there's nothing wrong with that. And nothing wrong with being analog. That doesn't mean old and outdated. It means to me that we are human, that we are not, in a sense, digitized, and that there is still a voice for the analog representation of who we are. And that is very, very important.
Yes.
In the old days of business, when I first really got in and started my business about 25 years ago, the internet really didn't exist, at least nothing like the form that it does today. And so back then it was all about eyeball to eyeball communication, flesh to flesh. It was about listening to people and then being able to present your ideas in a way that they saw interesting, palatable, inspiring, influencing, and then being able to say, hey, let's see if we can work together and help one another. And that's always what I've been about.
It's huge. So tell me a little bit about it. If I was going to level a comparison between, and not that there's any competition here, but between a Toastmasters approach and your approach at the Speakers Academy,
Yep.
because I've seen how they interact in those rooms, and I've seen how you facilitate that instruction, and there's a huge value to that.
Sure.
And I've also seen how Toastmasters approaches it.
Sure.
Both of them give a critique, ability, and opportunity. So help us understand a little bit about the difference.
Sure. Well, I was in Toastmasters almost, well, golly, that was about 25, 26 years ago. So you might say I cut my speaking teeth in Toastmasters as well as doing ministry work many years ago. And Toastmasters helped me lay a foundation for building confidence, building understanding of the spoken word. But I moved from Toastmasters over a period of years into the National Speakers Association. I've been a part of that organization for 10 years. I've been a part of the American Society for Training and Development for 25 years. So I've had a chance too. Plus, I've taught the effective business presentations through the Zig Ziglar Corporation. I was a part of the Dale Carnegie Corporation in light of their speakers course that they took many years ago. I've amalgamated and blended all of these different things together and come up with something that is different than Toastmasters, is different than what you might see in a typical training scenario in a corporate environment. And I've tried to take the best of all of those pieces and put them to something that's fun, that's fast-paced, that's interactive, that's in a sense short, because I believe we can only absorb what the butt can endure. And, our minds will shut down over a period of time. And so we need to make our training sessions short, punchy, to the point. Everybody has a chance to speak, everybody across the board, and then they get a chance to learn something new, something very specific about what the bigger picture of presentations is about. Toastmasters is primarily about delivery, and that is important. And most people think in terms of speaking as the delivery portion. I think of speaking in a much bigger terms. I think in speaking in terms of preparation, delivery, and then the piece that most people never think about is the follow-up piece. The follow-up piece, in my opinion, is the most important piece in what I call the PDF formula.
Okay.
More important than delivery, more important than preparation. Why do you think I say that?
Well, the retention is huge when we go back with an excellent follow-up, and follow-up is very difficult if you feel weak in the space. I guarantee you should be getting some training in this if we're concerned about it, but I'd love to hear your opinion, because that's where I'm coming from, but where are you coming from?
Well, what I've recognized is this. I can go to a networking event, or I can meet you at any place at any point in time, but if I don't take the time and put forth the effort to do follow-up with you, what do you think is really going to happen with our relationship? In most cases, unless you are an avid follow-up person,
Yeah, absolutely
it's
nothing.
just going to fall dead on the table at that point in time. So I've recognized the real work in networking is in the follow-up.
Oh,
The real work in speaking and in delivering a message is in the follow-up. Retention shows that most people forget 80 to 90% of what they've heard, even in a great presentation within 72 hours. 3 days, it's gone. It's gone. So if you're not constantly doing follow-up, you know, you've been a mom for many years.
Oh,
you
yes,
understand.
the whole training by repetition, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the old thing that I learned through Dale Carnegie. IRA, Impression, Repetition, Association. Impression, Repetition, Association. And if we're not constantly impressing, repeating, and associating what we learn with something that's important to that person, it's gone. It's vanished.
I just love this perspective, what you're sharing here, because no one's talking about that. No one's talking about the follow-up after the presentation. So
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
really going to make you work,
Yes, ma'am.
work on this one a little bit and share
Yes,
with our
ma'am.
audience, because I love this.
Yeah, and it came to me just because, again, what I recognize in looking at some of what I call the really greats of the greats, guys locally, as an example, like Zig Ziglar, who was, a speaking legend.
Right.
Zig did always a fabulous job with his preparation. You could tell he was up to snuff. He was up to date on his research. His delivery was impeccable. He had a great sense of humor. He imparted that to his audience, and his audience loved him for that. But Zig didn't stop there. Zig wrote the books, made the CD courses. He did incredible follow-up that kept people aware of who he was, of what he had to offer them, and of all the things that they could do through his organization, through his products, to continue to develop themselves on an ongoing basis. Without follow-up, a great delivery is forgotten by tomorrow.
Now, that's important to understand when we are coaching and training in those types of professions. But when we're looking at, say, a residential service company that is learning that speaking is the fastest way to grow their business, because it really is the fastest way. But how can they use that? Because I have seen presentations at networking meetings that actually I thought were quite good. However, they did lack that follow-up. Now that you're saying that, I'm going to be paying very close attention to that, and my own as well. So just that
Good.
sentence right there helped me up my game. So watch out for that, friends.
Good.
But that's very important. How would you suggest a company that actually has wares or services would use a follow-up mechanism?
Well, in today's world, it's easier than ever to follow up. In the old days, when we didn't have all of the digital platform that we have today, it took a lot of work and time and effort. It was snail mail through the mail, postcards and letters. It was phone calls that oftentimes may or may not have been returned. It was just much more, I won't say clumsy, but it was just more challenging in a lot of ways. In today's digital world, it's all about making sure you've shown them that you will not manipulate them and the goodwill that you've established with them by overusing that email address, and making sure they understand that it's all about continual drip, drip, drip. I have this to share with you. I'd like to offer you this. Here's some information that you may find interesting or helpful in what you're doing as a plumber, as an electrician, as a small business owner, a dry clean owner. All of those incredible small businesses, which I've always said are the backbone of America, they
Yes.
need to have continual education, reinforcement, and help on an ongoing basis.
It's the difference between how you this positioning.
Mm-hmm.
It's positioning, because if you do everything the way everyone else is doing it, and you don't level yourself up outside of that you've really become a commodity. How do you turn it into something more? How do you build into that sense of community and really draw on everything a great presentation, a great follow-up can add to everything that you're doing? Your bottom line can make a huge difference in a very short period of time if you connect yourself in the right way. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to show you, especially here in the DFW area, some of the resources that we have. But there's no reason that you can't be networking where you are, no matter where you're listening to this in the entire United States of America. Take advantage of that. For instance, you have some history with Master Networks. That's a national program. We're going to talk a little bit about that just so you're aware of it. But I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I certainly am. It's always great to recharge your batteries with some additional information that is actionable, that you can use immediately. I hope a light bulb has turned on for you about how you might start your follow-up. So we're going to listen to a few of our sponsors, and when we get back, we're going to talk with George Hendley a little bit more about his experience, and I urge you to have a pen and paper, because we got more, and you retain your information better if you write it down. So we'll be back in just after a few minutes. Just after a few minutes. That's not right.
Everything feel good over there?
Excellent. How's the sound level?
Everybody's good.
Great.
Everybody's good. Checking the weather because my knee hurts.
It's still real damp out there.
And we're back. This is Susan Hamilton. You're listening to the OffBeat Business Show. I'm talking about networking all month long, and we are sharing George Hendley and the Speakers Academy with you today. George, everything that you've heard, the first segment of our show, is really fantastic. And Georgia has a way of teaching that is so incredibly comfortable. I want to remove any fear that you might have about speaking or presenting for your business, because one thing that you're very good about with these groups is there's a comfort level that it's not an intimidation factor.
That's good.
And it's natural to have an intimidation
Absolutely.
factor when you're speaking in front of people.
Absolutely.
But when I was exposed to your program, it was in my very beginning of this section, and there was a very comfortable, and that's a skill to be able to really bring that to the whole group around the table. Good job.
Great, thank you. One of the things I recognized many years ago, I started life not being able to speak well. As a matter of fact, as a small child, I had a stutter, I had a little bit of a lisp, and it was through the dear ongoing work of my mother, follow-up, she really helped me overcome some of my early childhood issues, which were quite frankly very inhibiting for me. I know for years, because of the teasing of three sisters, that I withheld my voice and held back because I really didn't feel like I could speak with confidence and be heard. So it wasn't until I got into a speech class in high school, dear Mrs. Clemens, who was my teacher, and then beyond college, having the opportunity to repeatedly practice in a safe environment made opportunities for me to be able to rise up with confidence and competence over a period of years. So anybody, I believe, can learn that skill, and it is a critical skill. Susan, I believe there are 4 basic kinds of communication. 2 are incoming, 2 are outgoing. The 2 incoming are listening and reading. The 2 outgoing are speaking and writing.
Yes.
And those 4 skills make up who you are as a person from a point of view of being able to connect with others. I honestly believe, and have taught this for years, listening is the foundation of all communication. But because, again, most people assume that they listen well, it's hard to teach those skills. I've taught classes on listening, and they are not well attended. But people, that's true, but people recognize if I could only speak better, I could probably do better in sales, in service, in a lot of the communication issues that I face in my day-to-day comings and goings. So those are a little bit more enticing, yet even that, as you well know, speaking is the number one fear for people. People would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy at a funeral.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, again, it's because as a child, oftentimes, we are put in situations where we're laughed at or we're teased or made fun of, and we don't ever really then overcome those childhood things that constantly weigh us down and say, I better not speak up. I don't want to be heard and make a fool of myself.
Oh, it's just that's the reason they're not getting engaged in digital media strategies. That's exactly what we stand here to combat, because we can just get over it. That's just a story we tell ourselves that we can't exist in this space. But I think you touched on something with your earlier sentence about listening, and that listening that is your sales. if that's sales right there, it's not the selling, it's the listening. How can I take in? But I also think. Well, I shouldn't say but. I will remove that from my sentence. And I would say that if we're a little concerned about speaking, it could very well be that you're not getting out there and networking and listening to another and listening effectively. Because if you listen to how another business owner is presenting themselves, especially if they are doing what you're doing, that is key to really being able to step up in that space with some confidence, because you can start to differentiate yourself. Well, what would I say that's different? What do I offer that's a little bit different? What would I emphasize differently to get different results in the room? What worked for this speaker? What didn't?
That's right.
So listening, I think, would be wise in this area as well.
I think listening being the foundation of all communication, because when you think back, as a small child, before we could read or write or even speak with any kind of effectiveness, we were listening. So it truly is the foundation of all of how we learn after that point in time, we do learn to read. Hopefully we learn to write reasonably well, and we learn to speak with some kind of coherence. But it comes by step practice and a process over time. And I know, I'm constantly reading books of one kind or another about the speaking business and about delivering your message to people. So I look at myself as a learner. I never feel that I've learned it all, that I have mastered it all, that there's always a little bit more I can learn. May I talk about a couple of books that I brought, by the way?
Please.
Good.
Please.
I want to put in a plug for my longtime friend, Dean Lindsay.
You know we love Dean.
Of course.
Yes,
and
yes,
Dean
yes.
is a longtime friend of mine. Dean
Great
and I have known each other for over 15 years. Dean's written several books, but this one I think was his first. This one is Cracking the Networking Code. I even got a plug in here because I helped him with understanding some things about DISC, D-I-S-C, and the personality styles. But Dean's written a great, simple, practical, and doing it type of book that gets you into seeing the simplicity of why networking is not an event orientation, it's a lifestyle orientation. The other book that I brought was, again, something I read 20 years ago, Bob Berg, fabulous book. It helped me really see that networking, built on great listening and questioning skills, was not about me. It's about the other person. And if you can put the spotlight on the other person, make them feel good that you're really interested in them, you're just kind of back in the shadows. You're not of insignificance, but you put them in a place of great significance, and they feel somebody's listening to me.
Which is, we're craving that, like you mentioned at the beginning of the show.
Yes.
That's
oh,
so
yes.
important.
And people don't get enough of what I call being heard time. They crave it. I love that
Yes.
that fifth habit of Covey. Stephen Covey wrote the book 7 Habits. Seek first to understand. In other words, listen, then be understood. Then be understood. If you've taken the time to really understand someone, then they will typically say, George, I've been doing all the talking. What about you? And when they've reached that point, what a beautiful moment you have to engage them, and they'll be listening to you at that point in time.
I love that, especially when we connect that to influence, because that's exactly how to step into that space. Oh, George, you're just so pleasant to talk with this morning. And I'll tell you, what really blows my mind about this whole conversation, about this whole, what a gift to be able to speak to such wisdom over this entire month that we've been able to bring you about networking and how to use it, because this is even just another perspective on that listening that's so important, and because really if we can grasp what that means to the other person. One of the reasons, for instance, one of the reasons that I enjoy really good networking groups. Now, I will go to several just to see what that's about. Every once in a while, I just put myself on go. It's time to go see what's going on out there, because you got to keep one ear to the wall if you're in a business like mine. You got to start to pay attention to it. And I see things that work. I see things that don't work. I see areas that are a good investment of my time, and areas where it's not so great. Only because there's not the attitude. One thing you really want to look for in a networking group is a group of people with an attitude of, I want to improve my community. I want to make a difference with my business. If we don't get there, it can be very, very stale. But in that vein of listening and understanding, we understand how we serve better. Because when we might be looking for, how do I differentiate my business from everyone else? If we're looking for that and we're listening, we'll start to hear what they're saying in a way that will allow us to then present more effectively to their particular needs. Now you've become a valuable resource.
That's exactly right. Too oftentimes people shy away from opportunities to speak because they don't know how to handle being in the spotlight. But when you put the spotlight back on the audience and get them deeply engaged with the message and engaged with each other, then you again sort of step out of the spotlight temporarily until you re-engage them again in opportunities to say, you guys are having some great conversations, but I wonder, are you really thinking about this? And do more of what I call facilitative speaking rather than being the only mouth running in the room at that point in time. I can talk and talk and talk and talk, but you know what? I never learn anything when I'm doing all the talking. Duh! So it's all about me throwing out an idea, and hopefully they're willing to engage and really engage with me in what I call more of a conversational presentation than a me going blah, 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 blah.
Because we think we have to fill space. I'm guilty of it.
That's right.
I've been guilty of it, and I had to learn how to step into this space. Also, I remember one of my very first, my publishing coach on this magazine. He would ask me a question, and I'd answer him, and he'd say, "Are you done?" Because I felt like he wanted this answer when really what he wanted was for me to stop and consider what he was saying before I opened my mouth to respond. And it was brutal, but it was good. It was good for me to hear that,
Yeah.
And I'm sure you felt like that too in our earlier conversation, Susan. Will you just zip it up? Because I get so emphatic about things, and I've really had to learn over the years. And that doesn't come quick. And so, George, on that last note, I want to make sure we realize, friends, when you step out to speak, you're probably going to screw it up. You're probably going to say something wrong or awkward or feel weird. And I want you to know it's not the end of your world. It could very well just be the beginning, because no excellent speaker, no excellent presenter gets out there and does it without having a whole bunch of really bad experiences in their backpack, right?
That's
part of
exactly
the
right.
game.
When people really recognize that everybody's in a stumble, bumble, and fumble mode, everybody, and they learn to smile and go, oops, did it again, then they begin to recognize that, hey, other people will understand them, and they'll feel more at ease with them, because they go, oh, she made a mistake, or oh, he made a mistake. I guess it's okay for me too. And how freeing that is at that point in time. It takes the burden off, and then people relax and have fun doing it.
And now with that, George, please tell our audience how they can reach out to you, because you now have 6 locations.
That's right. That's right. We have 5 locations in Dallas. We have 1 location out east in Canton, and they can reach out to me via my phone or my email, george@thespeakersacademy.com, or 972-234-4377. I do answer my phone. I love conversations.
Wonderful. I'm going to have you repeat your phone number one
Sure.
more time.
972-234-4377.
Now, if you're driving down the road and you didn't get an opportunity to grab that, know that I will have all of that information alongside of this video and along with George's podcast page that we'll be sharing through our social media efforts. So make sure you connect with us. And if you need to know how to do that, listen, you're going to find everything that you need. You're going to find the lineup, our replays, our podcast, download our app, our magazine, all of our sponsor information, how to get involved in our membership directory, all of this at offbeatbusiness.com. Until next time, you've been listening to the Offbeat Business Show.